Nous voici à Haguenau, la ville où habitaient les grands-parents de Marie-Louise, la famille des Rendinger. Vous voyez aujourd'hui sur la droite le restaurant Le Tigre. Il n'y a actuellement plus qu'un seul restaurant, mais en 1903, voici une photo où vous voyez le restaurant du Tigre, restaurant Paradeplatz, et sur la photo, vous voyez écrit Brauerei des Rendinger, ce qui veut dire brasserie des Rendinger. C'est le restaurant que la famille des Rendinger avait.
During the time of Mother Marie-Louise, this square was full of shops, and every day there would be a different market. This photo will give us an idea of how active this place was. Another one shows us a sample of the different shops that were found in this place at that time.
Nous sommes à Marienthal, situé à 2 km d'Haguenau. Ce pèlerinage est très populaire et Marie-Louise est certainement venue prier ici avec sa famille.
Nous sommes devant la statue de Notre-Dame de la Joie. Marie porte l'enfant Jésus dans ses bras, dont le sourire est radieux. Maintenant, nous sommes devant la statue de Notre-Dame de douleur, dont les yeux tristes sont fixés sur son fils mort.
Nous voulons prier pour la congrégation des sœurs de Notre-Dame du Sacré-Cœur des Soldats et pour toutes les congrégations religieuses.
Souviens-toi, Notre-Dame du Sacré-Cœur, des merveilles que fit pour toi le Seigneur. Il t'a choisi pour mère et te voulut près de sa croix. Il te fait partager sa gloire et il écoute ta prière. Offre-lui nos louanges et nos actions de grâce. Présente-lui nos demandes. Fais-nous vivre comme toi dans l'amour de ton Fils, pour que son règne vienne. Conduis tous les hommes à la source d'eau vive qui jaillit de son cœur, répandant sur le monde l'espoir et le salut, la justice et la paix. Vois notre confiance, réponds à notre appel, et montre-toi toujours notre Mère. Amen.
Madame du Sacré-Cœur,
Priez pour nous.
Saint Joseph,
Priez pour nous.
Ce chemin de croix a été érigé en 1806 et les inscriptions que vous voyez sont rédigées en allemand et en français.
visiting Agano and Marienthal has been for me an experience of connection. Connection with the young Marie-Louise when, as a child, she visited her grandparents here in Agano. But also connection through Marie-Louise with Our Lady and with our Lord. Connection with Our Lady in her joy and in her sorrow. And connection with our Lord in His Paschal mystery. His suffering, His death, His resurrection. I am truly grateful for being here, for having been given the opportunity to pray and to remember in my prayer all those who are suffering in our world today.
Après une visite habituelle à leur famille vivant à Haguenau, les Mestmann regagnent leur magnifique maison de Wissembourg. Mais cette famille habituellement joyeuse sera bientôt touchée par un drame. Le père de Marie-Louise, Antoine Mestmann, meurt subitement. La santé de sa mère est précaire et elle ne peut compter que sur Marie-Louise, sa fille aînée. Marie, la plus jeune, n'a que 6 ans. Dans cette épreuve, la vie de Marie-Louise s'approfondit. On la voit souvent agenouillée dans l'église, près de l'autel de Marie, consolatrice des affligés.
Marie-Louise est née et élevée dans une famille chrétienne. Son milieu de vie était un terrain propice au développement de ses germes précieux et de vertus qui allaient prospérer sous l'action de la grâce de Dieu. Elle avait beaucoup de qualités qui ont fait d'elle plus tard une femme sérieuse et responsable. Déjà de son extérieur sérieux, elle annonçait ce que serait un jour l'épouse et la mère, ainsi que la responsable d'une congrégation. Marie-Louise avait éprouvé une profonde douleur suite à la mort de son père et changements dans sa vie. Elle assuma très tôt les responsabilités familiales avec beaucoup de dévotion et d'amour afin de venir en aide de sa mère très affectée par la mort de son mari. En dépit de cette épreuve, sa vie spirituelle ne s'est pas affaiblie. Au contraire, on la voyait très fréquemment à l'église. Elle avait une dévotion profonde à la Sainte Vierge Marie et était heureuse d'être à son service. Mais il semble que Dieu, qui l'a destinée à la vie religieuse, s'était réservé de l'y amener par un chemin détourné pour la préparer à remplir une mission spéciale. Au vu de tout ce qui précède, nous pouvons comprendre clairement comment ont été semées les graines de sa vocation à la vie religieuse et d'où lui venaient ses compétences et sa foi solide qui l'ont permis d'assumer les responsabilités d'une congrégation nouvellement fondée.
Nous voici à Wissembourg pour une deuxième journée sur les pas de Mère Marie-Louise.
In 1857, at the marriage of her cousin Josephine de Rendinger, Marie-Louise met the bridegroom's brother, Victor Hartzer. They often say that marriage is contagious. Be that as it may, on February 16, 1858, their wedding took place in the Abbey Church of St. Peter and Paul, that has been the scene of other major events in the life of Marie-Louise. Victor, a prison inspector, was 11 years older than Marie-Louise.
Their first 3 years of marriage were spent in Hensisheim, where Victor was named prison director. Their first son, Marie-Victor Ferdinand, was born on the 23rd of November 1858. 2 years later, Marie Leopold was born. Right after their birth, Marie-Louise had her sons consecrated to Our Lady. The family lived within the confines of the prison establishment. Then, Victor Hartzer was named director of prisons in the Upper Rhine department of France, with his residence in Colmar. The family moved house 3 months later. The professional advancement of Victor Hartzer, named Inspector of Prisons in the Mayenne department of France, caused the family to leave Alsace and to settle in Laval for 5 years. Their house was near the Cordiers Church, where Marie-Louise went to Mass and communion each morning. The Hartzer home became alive with Victor played the violin and Marie-Louise the piano. The end of 1866, Victor Hartzer became Inspector of Prisons of the Upper Saône with his residence in Vesoul. As a well-bred woman, Marie-Louise fulfilled her obligations graciously and joyfully. Her spiritual life was developing. She loved to pray at the altar of the hospital chapel where the Sisters of Charity worked. Marie-Louise met Father Furman, a professor at the seminary, who became her spiritual director. Soon after the transfer to Vesoul, Victor Hartzer began to feel the onset of an insidious form of paralysis. Marie-Louise knew that he could never recover. In March, her youngest sister, Marie, a girl of 21, died. In June, the brother of Victor died suddenly in Haguenau.
On September 19th of that same year, Victor died, having at his side Marie-Louise and his eldest son, Fernand. During his last illness, he had become completely paralyzed, so that on his deathbed, he could neither make his confession nor receive Holy Communion. Marie-Louise wrote to Father Villema, "In all my life, I have never prayed so fervently as in those terrible moments when I asked God so earnestly to save this beloved soul. I trust all to His mercy." Marie-Louise became a young widow at the age of 32, having the responsibility for the education of her 2 sons, ages 9 and 11. She who loved to pray had the experience of feeling abandoned by God. She wrote, "I face the future with dread, but I trust in the goodness of God and in His protection. Unhappily, I can no longer recollect myself in order to pray. At times, it seems to me that I am estranged from God and that He has forgotten me. My children alone give me a hold on life."
In Ensisheim, Marie-Louise wholeheartedly fulfilled her Christian duties in family life by making a warm and welcoming home for her husband and children. She had everything that could make her happy, and it was not difficult for her to thank God for all His blessings. But soon life became more challenging. The promotion of Victor Hartzer obliged the family to move houses regularly, with many partings from friends and familiar places. This taught Marie-Louise the art of making a happy home wherever she found herself. However, Marie-Louise had to become even more detached. While living in Vesoul, Victor became sick. From that time on, Marie-Louise's life was full of sadness. Imagine the anxiety and compassion she felt seeing her husband dragging himself around on his tours of inspection until he became completely paralyzed. Marie-Louise, who had supported her husband in good times, would also do so in bad times. She took care of all Victor's needs. In that same period, Marie-Louise was confronted with the death of her youngest sister and her brother-in-law. When Victor finally died, Marie-Louise felt abandoned by God, but realized that happiness here is not a reward for virtuous behavior, and faith and charity do not make Christians immune to the suffering in the world. Later, Marie-Louise felt that God was bringing her closer to himself. Through marriage, God prepared Marie-Louise for her task as First Superior General. She developed a life of self-denial and surrendering to the will of God. She became a true Mother General, who gave to our community life a true family spirit and was daring enough to send sisters to the mission from the very beginning.
Après la mort de son mari, Marie-Louise décide de retourner en Alsace. Elle rejoint Strasbourg. Nous partons maintenant vers Strasbourg.